health itself on the level of talking and speaking to one another, because that seems to be very problematic these days. We seem to be triggering one another just by speaking about our stuff. And how else are we going to talk about our stuff without speaking? So today I'd like to introduce a friend of mine. Les?
My name's Les Levenson, and I'm a mental health advocate also, and I wanted to start what I'm calling compassion conversations, and Max decided to join me and help out a little bit on this with his experience in education, and see if we can normalize what we think of mental health and the treatment, and just try to understand it better. Right, Max?
Absolutely. Absolutely. A part about talking about mental health is being compassionate with each other. Like I said before, we seem to be triggering each other. So maybe, like you're saying, a good first step is to be compassionate with our words, the words we use, right?
Right, absolutely. I think that, Max, I just think that we don't have to really talk about the seriousness when people have problems with behaviors, or with they don't have clarity of thinking and are having issues that stops them from functioning well. We're not talking about that at all. I think what I'd like to talk about, it's just more of our it's just a natural part of being human, having emotions and feelings, and and just being aware of it. Does that make sense, Mike?
It makes sense. I guess my question to you is, what can we do to be more aware? How do we become more aware? And what words do we use without,
Right.
making someone go, oh my God,
That,
don't say that, or, you said too much.
well, a lot of it too is, if we're if we're trying to do the right thing all the time, we think of being, as far as getting along with people, and we practice, I guess, just try to do, I don't know, bring it sort of mindfulness thinking, where you're thinking ahead to be, in all conversations, you try to speak in a way that you care about people, and you say the words that are not, that are not negative, they're not demeaning, and you try to leave them out. So if if I think of a person trying to work on that, and he listens really to the other person, and not, to not take all the conversation, acknowledge the other person and let them talk, and go from there. Don't, and not be, if you've got a situation where you're stressed out or whatever, maybe your expression or communication is not going to be the best. But this is where I think human compassion understanding is about, right?
Right, right. So you're
So, I
saying,
mean, do you think that, if we have mental health education, do you think that it's just more or less trying to learn to listen more, and as a basic, listen more and try to be compassionate, and not try to understand people, put yourself in their shoes? I always say that, and try to do that, and of course it's all different with each individual, depends on their mood and what's going on, but I think it's something that everybody has to learn. That's why it becomes hard, because everybody's different, right?
everyone is different. And for a while there, I was thinking like, well, how do we do this without feeling like we're walking on eggshells, or we're being too, as they say, directive and gruff, or like, too assertive. But then you said it, you struck the key right there. It's filling the gaps, if you will, with compassion. Wherever there's that stuck point, you add some empathy, and you put yourself in
That's
their
it.
shoes, and you
That's the
say,
word I was
for a
looking for,
second,
empathy.
right? And for a second, you're like, all right, I'm not offended. I'm putting myself in their shoes, and I'm saying, what's going on there that making them feel this way? Maybe I could step back from my stuff and learn from their angle for a minute, and from their perspective, and not feel so offended, but feel like, okay, maybe there's something going on there to make this person feel this way. Is that what you're saying, Les?
Yeah, and you know that because of let's say a person is not in a good mood, he's feeling bad, and maybe they're having a serious bad day where they're feeling really depressed, and maybe this is something an ongoing thing. They're very depressed all the time, but that doesn't mean that's who they are. Yeah, because I've read some that, and I don't know if it's true, but people that seem to have the most emotional problems can be the most intelligent people, and so my point is just that we don't need to, because we have an emotional problem, be labeled that as a human being, because we're so much more than that, and that's why I think we have to get away from that. Does that make sense as far as dwelling on it?
No, it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. And that's, I think we're circling back to the point about education. And like, I know people don't like, you hear that word, oh, I got to learn something. But in the reality,
That's it. That's it.
and I'm not trying to make fun of people that don't want to sit down and either read a book or a magazine. That's fine. Sometimes I just want to zone out too. But the reality of the fact is, I can't zone out all the time. Sometimes I have to sit down and put pencil to paper and be like, okay, I got to figure this out, or I will be able to pay my bills, or drive a car, or any of these things. It's the same thing with mental health. Sometimes we got to sit down and say, okay, that's what that emotion is, or that's what that feeling is. Learn about it, so we don't have encounter so much shit in our lives and stuff doesn't blow up, right?
That's it. That's it. And I wanted to make another. We're starting this conversation to have it's more of an understanding of mental health, like we're talking about. Yeah, this is what the whole conversation is about. But part of that conversation of understanding what mental health is it's individualized, where the person. So many people think, well, this doesn't affect me. I don't have a problem. Man, I've been through it, where years ago I said, this doesn't affect me, until later on I see the damage I've done to my career, to my family. Not, thank God it didn't destroy it. But I could see where if I was more aware, I could have worked on things and got maybe talked to some people that are professional, that therapists or some, to help identify areas to work on and just to get my thinking lined out. So why does people, do you think, make it such a ordeal of saying, well, I'm gonna need some help, because you should, I'm, why, when they're thinking, oh yeah, I got an anger problem, or I'm depressed. Why do they make such a big deal that maybe they need a little guidance? Why is that such a big deal? I say grow up and get taken.
Because for some people everything's an ordeal. And I'll be honest, sometimes everything's an ordeal for me. Sometimes I don't want to get out of bed and make breakfast. That's an ordeal. Oh God, I gotta make breakfast. Oh God, I gotta get up and take a shower. You know what I mean? Like, but the fact of the matter is, if we let everything become an ordeal, and if we let everything become this huge thing, then what's gonna happen to us? We'll
That's
collapse.
it.
We'll
So
collapse.
if we're talking about mental wellness or just well-being, trying to stay healthy, then you know people should be concerned. Well, if they're taking care of their body, they're going to the gym, mind too. But sometimes you need a little more fine-tuning, little mind gym workout, I call it, and you need to know ahead of time, what do I need to do. Does that make sense, Max? So what
Absolutely.
you know I'm I don't so I think that's what I don't, like you said, people are, I agree with, I understand why people will say, well, I'm gonna let it go, I don't need to do that, so I'm doing fine without it, and I can get by. Yeah, I mess up, I go home, argue with my wife a little bit, but I'll patch it up or make excuses. And
Right.
but like you said, if it is a problem, and a lot of times it can get worse, then you really,
Then you're really in
really got
trouble.
problems.
Exactly. It's
So
like a
how
flat
do we
tire.
how do we educate people, or how do we know, how does a person know, well, beforehand, I need to do this, and learn that this is something they should do?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head with the compassion part and the empathy. Like, a lot of mental health is relationships, right? And it's not always our stuff, it's our stuff with other people. So if you're listening and talking with other people like your wife or your daughter, you start listening to what's going on with them, going on, and put yourself in their shoes, and you say, okay, this is what they're dealing with. So that's something you pay attention to first. You prioritize that need because you prioritize your relationships, right? And the relationships you put at the forefront of your life are those you pay attention to and say, this is what I got to work on first because this is what's important to me, right?
Well, yeah, that makes sense. If I mean, I think a lot of times when we're having personal problems, emotions and behaviors, and we're married or we have closer relationship, that's when it really is going to affect us to work. If we don't have a close relationship and we're just going to work, I think we might be able to get by with that and get angry a little, whatever. We might even control it better. And then when and if we go home, we are tired. There's nobody there every day that we have to, let our emotions out or feeling. Maybe that's where people, show their emotions and where they have partnerships and relationships,
Oh, I agree with
marriage.
you. There's no doubt that there's a self care component to all this, and that whether it's relationships or you're single and you're just going about your life, you got to take care of yourself. All right, but usually nobody's just living in a vacuum. So whether you're single or you're married or whatever, you're running into people. You're running to the post office guy or the guy at the gas station or the guy at the deli that makes your sandwich. Either way, usually it's other people that tick us off, unless we've got some sort of like sadness within us, right? Or some sort of anxiety that has to do with just who we are and what we're about. And that seems more like an ethical dilemma to me more than anything else. It's really not so much mental health. That's more like, a philosophical like yearning, like what am I doing and why am I here? More of a deeper issue than just, this person's making me angry or that person's getting me upset. It's always usually about other people, our interactions with them, and how we take it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I, 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 I understand what you're saying. I mean, your mental well-being, if your emotions and behaviors affects all relationships, I agree with that 100%. But the only reason I said when if you're like married and your emotions go deeper, that you might be affected more so there of your emotions because you already have a very close a feeling for that person, and because of that, and maybe because you think you might take the person for granted, so who you love, and you've had a bad day, so you latch out on her or whatever, and then before long that becomes a habit how we treat each other. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm not. I wasn't. But I mean, that's what I was trying. I said I think that the closer the relationship, the more emotions you feel.
Oh yeah.
You know what they say, the old saying goes, you hurt the ones you love the most. I think there's some truth to that.
Of course. Of course. Because the closer that person is to you, the more emotion you exert, the more you absorb, right? Because it's
Right.
there and you can feel it. It's more visceral. And I think that gets back to the bigger conversation, right? About why we talking about this. We're talking about this because you have relationships, I have relationships, we all do. We all have people that are important to us, and we want to treat them the right way. And we want them to treat us the right way. And how do we do that? We learn about them, we learn about each other more, and we try to understand each of our perspectives in a way that's not harming another, a non harmful perspective. Um, and the only way to figure that out is, like you said, you ask questions, you listen. And if you're not listening, listen harder, listen deeper, right? Maybe it's your own stuff that's getting in the way. Either way, the answer is there. It's about how you discover it, right? That's the key, right? Just like that train, I think came in at the most purposeful time. It's how you discover the answer, because you could discover it the wrong way, right? Landing in the hospital sometimes, like you need to. That's not what I'm saying. but maybe there are better, more safer ways of learning about mental health. And that's what this is about. We want to figure out things before those things hurt us, right? We want to fix our problems before our problems hurt us. And we have to stay ahead of it. So the best way of staying ahead of it is having these conversations, I think.
Well, how do we, just like me and you were talking, Max, how
Yeah,
can people just talk about how they feel on at the where at and feel comfortable about it? This is what this I think that we're trying to the meat of the conversation. This is what we want to focus. We wanted to say this is okay. We can, a lot of people, and depending on the problems they have, they keep a lot of these feelings locked up. So that sometimes it's hard to put words to how you feel, right?
exactly, exactly. You know, I think that's the hardest thing to do because how do you put a word to an emotion without messing up, right?
It is.
And and, and,
It's
and,
self.
and the best part is
It,
you put your word to their
we
emotion
talk
and you mess
about
up
because
even
we say
more.
we know what emotion means.
Right, 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 right. The big,
So,
yeah, it's enough.
so,
Oh my
so
God.
you, yeah, I know. So, do you think that's the catch 22?
I do.
I think it is
I
too.
do.
I think it's just that's what might be holding us back as far as just understanding our own self and the feelings, and then when it comes to mental wellness, getting treatment, we look we see what's going on around, and we hear what happens, some things that might go wrong, and we don't have the right information before you know, and then we create the stigmas created. So then nobody wants to get help because they're going to put it off because this person didn't get. I mean, it snowballs. I mean, why can't we create something with mental health that's good to snowball instead of this bad that everybody looks at? I mean, we have to. That's one of the things we have to. Just like it. I'll tell you what. Yeah, if anybody researches anything, what's going on today, they say, "What's going on with the current events?" And people, my God, there's people doing research left and right. Now, if everybody did their research with mental health, they'd find out a lot more, that makes sense probably than they realize, wouldn't they?
Well, you hit the nail on the head there. Everyone's doing something else. Everyone's doing something different. Everyone's focused on something else, and people are operating up here when in fact the problems are down here. So there's a disconnect. How do you connect the research up here to the people down here? Like you said, it's everyday conversations. People have to, these academics have to get their lofty noses out of the ivory tower and bring it back down to the everyday man and woman experiencing
So,
their stuff. And that's all there is to it.
so then if we can just, as peers or just human beings, just share emotions, talk about it, just like we're talking now, do you think that would help us understand ourselves and what mental health, our own mental health, is about and behavior and
I
all
don't
this?
I don't just think so. I'm convinced of it. Convinced. And let's let's just say that that's a little bit about what we're going to be doing in the future, starting right here, right now. So I'd like to thank you for joining me today. And I look forward to many of these conversations in the future, linking the
Do you
disconnect here together, right?
Well, that's super. That's what I wanted to do, Max. Do you? And I want to end this, or we can both end it. But I think that if we have listeners that they're free to leave comments or questions for us, and that we can get back and look at them and get back with them to help them. But if they have questions, so
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you have questions, you'll email us both. Our information will be right at the bottom of the screen. Thank you. And have a good night, everybody. Take care. Smile.